Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is another Red Pill Religion podcast. And tonight, Andrew Stratelates and John Brister is going to be debating Rebel the Atheist and Sky. We'll start with Sky and move to Rebel, and then Josh Brister and Andrew, if you all just say hi and give a short introduction of who you guys are.
All right. Hi, I'm Sky, and I don't have an introduction.
My name's Rebel, and yeah, also nothing much else to say.
All right. Well, yeah, my name is Josh Brister, and I'm happy to be here. I go by Apologist Supreme on Twitter. You can find my debates on YouTube. I've debated some of the best, including Dr. Graham Oppie and the Freedom from Religion Foundation president, Dan Barker. It's just a pleasure to be here. We treat people with respect, and that's something we want to keep on doing. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, this is Andrew Stratelates. I am very active on Twitter at Stratelates and on this channel, and my hobby that you guys will know me by is philosophy, theism, and Christian apologetics.
All right, excellent. So tonight's debate is atheism versus Christianity evidence. Who want which side wants to start first with what? I mean,
I suggest that the guests of Sky and Rebel go first.
Okay. So, well, for mostly, I guess I should start with the reason why I don't believe in God, because I don't know what argument to come up with. Exactly. No, so the main reason most atheists don't believe in God is because we can't be provided sufficient evidence because of the scientific theory. There hasn't been much evidence to that. And do you have anything that can bring evidence?
You can go ahead, Andrew.
Sure. So there are two different ways to sort of look at that, right? That we'll break into what evidence is, right? So evidence is what actually warrants a belief as sufficient, and there are two. Yeah. So there are two types of evidence. There are evidence that we reason from, right? So an example of this sort of evidence is direct observation of things falling, right? Through that and other observations and math, we reason and conclude that gravity exists and believe in gravity. So that's one type of evidence where we can actually say what the evidence is and then articulate our thought process from the evidence to the conclusion. The other type of evidence that we often hear about or that we actually have to use is sometimes called direct perception. So basically, that type of reasoning where we go from observation to a conclusion doesn't cover all of the sorts of beliefs that we have. And so the other sort of belief that we have is sort of a direct perception with the mind of the truth of something. So an example of this is the laws of logic are directly perceivable as true. And these are sometimes called properly basic beliefs because the human mind is able to see the truth of them directly. And so there are two basic arguments here. One is that there are indeed arguments similar to the argument for the existence of gravity, for the existence of God, and that's what natural theology is. And Pfizer and Aquinas have great examples of this. And then the other one is that for many believers, or for many people, they actually directly perceive the truth that there is a God through their cognitive faculties. And so the evidence is that direct perception. And so I'm happy to go on either of these directions, but the sufficiency argument about evidence, there's some details that we'll have to hash out, but it basically comes to, what do you mean by evidence? Do you mean the first type, where it's something you logically go from, or the second type that includes properly basic beliefs?
I would say the first type is the main form of evidence. The second type seems drawing a conclusion from something you might not know, but seems logical. Which I've seen a lot of times people say, like, you don't know the origin of the universe, so therefore God is an answer to that, and that's not evidence. Saying something that because we don't have an answer for means that your answer to conclusion isn't evidence. Evidence would be a published paper or watching it happen.
Okay, so let me break that down a little bit to make sure that I understand what you're saying. That making an appeal to ignorance, like saying that we don't know why this state of affairs is as it is, therefore God did it, is not evidence. And I would agree with that. And then you also said that the type of evidence you would accept is something like a published paper or testimony from someone who directly saw it. Is that right?
I wouldn't say testimony from somebody who directly saw it, because somebody's words are not very trustworthy. Something that was recorded by film, or something that is easily reproducible and seen yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is this a universal standard of evidence, or something that is specific to God?
No, this is universal.
Okay. Do you believe that I have a mind?
Yes.
Okay. Why is that?
Because you're human, and all humans we know have brains, or else they would be dead.
And so you believe that I have a brain, but you've not directly observed it, nor have you seen a published paper about it.
Not on you specifically, but on human beings I have.
Okay. So the question then is, if you've observed one instance of this, right, then you are generalizing to me, right? So you've seen other humans that have minds, for example, yourself, right? You know that you have a mind, but you're reasoning from that I have a mind too. And so one of the answers to what the evidence for God is why are you able to make that sort of reasoning, right? So are you just guessing, or did you do something logically that will lead to the truth?
I assume what you're trying to get at is saying, like, how is logic? Like, sorry. What you're trying to say is, am I taking a guess, or is it a logical conclusion?
Yeah.
It's a logical conclusion.
Okay, so if that's the case, there must be some sort of universals that we can look to, right? So I'm a person, and therefore I have a mind, for example, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that comes about because the universe is uniform and reasonable, right? That we can use our minds to understand the universe, correct?
For the most part, yes.
Yeah, in theory, we can understand it, right? Yeah. We might be limited by our intelligence or our experience or things like that.
Let's just wait 1 second. Could you possibly mute your mic while you're not speaking, guys? Rebel.
Sorry.
Okay, just mute it when you're not speaking.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so basically, where were we? You believe that I have a mind, but you haven't directly observed it, but you're able to make that logical conclusion based on other things that you've seen, right?
Yes.
So, and that is partially from your own experience of you're a human, and you have a mind, and you know that universals exist.
Yes.
Okay, so then the question is, I guess the next question to sort of show the way that I think about these things, because this is really a conversation, is everything needs to have everything in theory has an explanation for it, right?
In theory.
So
Yes.
yeah, in theory, and so this is sort of the starting point for someone like me to look at the universe and think about God. And the question is the universe different in that it doesn't have an explanation, or in principle does the universe itself have an explanation as well?
I don't think we know if there's an explanation to the universe. We don't know why a lot of the things are yet.
Sure, and that's entirely reasonable, but that doesn't mean that an explanation doesn't exist.
Yes.
And so we can also look at the types of things that explanation would have to do, right? So that explanation would have to explain the underlying order of the universe, for example. It would have to explain the existence of human nature. It would have to explain and we'll go into more detail of human nature. It has to explain what is a human and how do we relate to explanations and how do we relate to the universe itself.
I think instead of just how humans relate to the universe itself, how all living things would relate to the universe itself.
Sure, and how the universe relates to different parts of it.
Yeah.
And then how the universe relates to mathematics and things like that too.
Yeah.
I think what Andrew is getting at, there's a lot of things that are simply taken for granted by the atheistic philosophical proponent, and he has no justification. Now, he brought up the existence of other minds. If you can't perceive something in direct observation, don't you have to don't you have to have faith or trust that your cognitive faculties are correctly interpreting the external world?
Yes, I would. I don't have physical proof that you have a brain, but for the most part, I have experienced that everybody on the planet who can speak has a brain. So I would logically depict that you too.
You're trusting now that induction is valid. Now, if physicalism or naturalism, or if there's no underlying meaning to the universe, how can someone possibly make such an inference? Wouldn't it be the process of meaninglessness? So how could you make that universal?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that.
If you're not sensing something directly by your senses, you're making an inference to the best explanation. So even though maybe the theist doesn't have proof of things like the beginning of the universe, or the laws of logic, or the design of the universe, or the source of objective moral values, couldn't the theist, by trusting our cognitive abilities, use inference to the best explanation.
Yeah, an atheist could. It's reasonable to trust and to believe that it might be that, because a logical conclusion would be that something created the universe, and that is one of the answers for it. But I don't have proof that you're human. I'm logically assuming that you are. So an inference that somebody created the universe is not proof. It's only a theory. It's only a thought.
Well, hold on. Why think that the Christian theist needs proof? Proof comes in the form of mathematics. And as far as I know, by studying the history of philosophy, no theist has to meet that burden of proof, or would say that to be rational in holding such a belief, we need to be certain or have absolute proof. It seems to me that if we deal in probabilities and plausibilities, that theism, when it comes to the beginning of the universe, the design of the universe, objective moral values, etc., it's more plausible or more rational to be a theist. Now, what would you say to that?
I understand what you mean, saying that like they would take the probable cause, and you were saying back then, we had a lot less understanding of science, and we didn't have the burden of proof. We would mostly take people's words for it. That's why religion was very abundant. Actually, it still is. That's a pointless point. But so you're trying to say that, like, why do you need proof when the probability would show somebody being a theist?
Well, I think science today, not just the history of science, which shows many of the of science, how it developed in the 17th and 18th century. Almost all were explicit Christian thinkers like Galileo or Newton or Boyle or Kepler, or there's others. I could go on and on. But it seems to me that the evidence that we do have, the positive evidence, shows that the universe did begin to exist about 14 billion years ago, and that there is a design in the universe for the eventual evolution of life to even be possible. It seems to me that the theist is on rational grounds, and that's not a God of the gaps argument. It's following the evidence where it leads. Now,
I would like to interject for 1 second before you continue on with that. As I was listening to this, I'm not exactly sure what you guys are meaning by proof. One of the multiple definitions of proof would be something that induces certainty or establishes validity. The process of an instance of establishing the validity of a statement, especially by derivation from other statements and according to principles of reasoning. Which definition of proof are we going with when we're talking about proof?
I'll let Andrew answer this, since you're the mathematician, Andrew.
So I guess the way that I personally would use proof is something that provides certainty, right? So a proof is something beyond a reasonable doubt. That I think it would be the most productive way to discuss it here. But yeah, that's a very good point, Jean. That the proof is one of those squishy words that has multiple definitions.
I would agree that, yeah, proof is something that provides complete certainty of something. So I agree with that.
Now let me make this statement. Nobody walks or does anything in life with the standard of having to have absolute proof or meeting that standard. We do things on inferences to the best explanation. And by our perceiving things, how we get information through the retina and how we interpret it, we have a selection process. There's a near infinite amount of possibilities of this live flowing stream of data that we have to select from the realm of possibilities. So it seems to me that our selection process leads to argument that we have a justification for many of these arguments, especially the plausibleness of the premises of the different arguments, like from the cosmological or the teleological arguments. Now, what say you about that?
So you're trying to say that we don't have to uphold the standard of proof constantly throughout our life, but we can trust our eyes. That's what I got from that?
We can trust our cognitive abilities about the reliably giving us true beliefs about the external world, and we can trust our intuitions about the external world. Like, I can trust that I exist, that I'm talking to you, that you're another mind, that the external world exists, that it shows at least the appearance of design, that at least science shows that the universe did begin to exist 15 billion years ago. I think all of those perceptions lead to a more rational justification under theism over and above atheism.
I would like to say a couple of things. First, the reason things might seem like they have design would be, and this is not proven at all, it's an assumption and it's a theory. So I'm not going to say this is the reason, but a reason for it could be that it's because we exist in this world. So through our eyes, of course, it's going to look organized because it's how we were born with it. It was how we've always seen it. So it might seem normal. And also about the universe starting 15 billion years ago, it was the Big Bang that happened and the expansion of matter, but we don't actually know when that matter originated from.
Yeah, the physicists believe that the space and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. So when you go back in time, and you mentioned the expansion of the universe, we could also mention the red shift, and the laws of thermodynamics. All point, all are used in conjunction to show that the universe did have a beginning. Now, you did point to something. We shouldn't be surprised by perceiving design for if we weren't alive, if we did not exist, there would be no reason for it. What you're jumping onto is something called I believe it's called the weak anthropic principle. Developed by Barrow and Tipler in their book, the Anthropic Principle. John Leslie, in his 1988 book, Universes, gives the example of a firing squad. You have 100 sharpshooters that are aiming their guns at one person, and they get ready, and they all shoot, and they all miss. Now, is the logical conclusion or a justification to say that there can't be design, because if we weren't alive, we wouldn't be here? No, John Leslie shows in his book that it's an inference. It's a wise inference to say perhaps the guns were shooting blanks. So I don't think that argument you gave is a very good one.
The argument you're referring to is when I said how we perceive might be why we think it's normal.
Yes, I expanded that, tried to
Okay.
make it as strong as I could. But John Leslie and others have dealt with that argument. It's in the scientific literature. It's known as the anthropic principle. And I tried to make that argument as strong as I could. Usually, when there's the appearance of something, not always, but usually, we are justified in saying that there is a rationale behind that appearance.
Yes.
So, and I just want to compliment you, Sky, on being very sharp and an excellent partner in this discussion. I've dealt with a lot of people on Twitter that can't hold a candle to you. So, props
Absolutely.
to you, and you're making this very engaging for us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Another problem with that argument, and I agree that is a good skeptical counter to it, is that it's a skeptical counter to everything, right? So any state of affairs, not just like creation or the existence of the universe or things, could be just, well, it's because we have a cognitive preconception or bias to look at things that way. And that's, in some sense, the strength and weakness of it is that it's strong enough to attack anything, which is sort of what the schools of the skeptics, like the Pyrrhonians and Sixtus Empiricus, did. But it also can refute any state of affairs, not just the God question, so to speak.
Yeah.
And just to sort of segue a little bit on to this, I would like to chat just a little bit, and we definitely need to allow Rebel to chat a bit too.
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
Yeah, so I'd like to chat a little bit about what the Christian map of meaning is, or what the effect of Christianity is with regards to the world as an arena for action. But we can get that after Rebel says his piece.
Okay.
Rebel?
Sorry. Yeah, that's.
Do you have anything to say, Rebel?
Man, yeah, I'll pass.
All right.
Hey.
That's fair enough. Sometimes it happens to the best of us. So no problems there. But I guess you can we can go ahead and discuss what you were saying, Andrew.
Yeah, and you know, this is something that is the answer that, or the conclusion that I've come through, and I believe that this is correct, and I have reasoning behind it. But basically, the idea is any worldview or system has to explain all the paradoxes of what it means to be human. And I believe that Christianity does that the best, right? Because humanity and being human has many unusual aspects to it. One, we are individuals, but we're also members of community. We try to do right, and we have a good understanding of right and wrong, but we always seem to fail. We have a sense of responsibility in this to multiple things, not just when others observe us, but when we're alone. And these all sort of have to combine into a system of looking at the world. And I think that Christianity offers the fullest understanding of this, to look at the world as a place of action. And you know, not everyone craves an answer to that as much as others, but I think that that's a really important piece to discuss about religion in general and Christianity in particular, is that map of meaning for the world as an arena of action.
Before we go on, Rebel, can you mute your microphone, please?
Again, sorry, didn't catch that.
Thank you.
Sorry, didn't quite.
Oh, he didn't hear you. He said to mute your mic when you're like not talking.
Sorry.
Okay, so you're saying some like paradoxes of being human, and is like why we live in communities and why we have morals. Are those some of the ones you were saying?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So for why we are in communities, it's mostly because it helped us survive. As when we were had no technology, just had stones, we would not get far without other people to help us. There was a lot stronger animals out there that could have killed us. So over time, we would develop like a gene that would make us want to be with other people. And that allowed us to stay together and survive. So those people survived, passing on that gene that made us more inclined to join society.
Sure. So let's think about that, right? So if being pro-social or wanting to be part of a society helps us survive, we know that there are other aspects of our biology that helped us survive too, right? We love sugar and fat, for example, right? So, and we also tend to be lazy. So there are these tendencies that do have a basis in our ancestral environment before we had so much technology, but it doesn't seem to be the case that those things oblige us to the same types of things that being part of society is, right? So, for example, if you want to be healthy, one of the things you actually have to do is fight against your natural tendency to eat fat and sugar. But if you want to be healthy in a social way, or in the communal aspects of being human, that actually doesn't mean we go against that instinct, but we actually try to cultivate it, and specifically in certain ways, right? We try to cultivate our affection not only for the people that look like us, but also for the stranger that doesn't look like us. And that oftentimes in like a hunter-gatherer society is the wrong strategy, because if you're going to be murdered, which is actually very likely as a hunter-gatherer, you're going to be murdered by a member of another tribe. So it's entirely reasonable to fear and hate people that don't look like you. And so this is what I mean by sort of the paradox, right? That some aspects of it can be explained by survival, but some of the things are counter to our understanding of survival in our ancestral environment. Yet they still provide a duty for us to do, that we still have a duty to our community, even if it doesn't benefit our survival directly.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not aware if there is any genetic reason for why we are, say, welcoming to strangers or not. I don't know if we have an answer for that. I'm just not aware of that. So I can't really give you a full answer of why or why not we do that. Yeah, I don't have much.
Sure.
I can't say much for that.
Yeah, and that's entirely reasonable. And I've presented my explanation, which is that God himself is, in his being, actually social, right? That's what the Trinity, part of what the Trinity means, is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are three persons in communion or in love, in a relationship with each other, and we're actually made in that image, and that is sort of the origin of that human tendency, and that desire to cultivate it, and that's the explanation that Christianity basically presents, is that is how we are made to be, but through the mistakes we make or the errors in judgment we do, we aren't able to fulfill that fully. And so one of the things about a religion, and Christianity in particular, is not only does it offer an explanation, but it actually offers a guide of what we should do about this state of affairs. And like I said, some people don't think that a guide is necessary, but I definitely think it is. So,
and I just want to say what Jesus said. One thing that goes with this: we don't live on bread alone, but there's a whole realm of reality, morals, moral truths, ethical truths, so many things we live by, and we don't live by mere survivability.
For moral truths, do you mean like objective morality or a preset morality?
I believe that there are objective moral truths in the world, and I believe you affirm that too. I think we can, I often talk to atheists. In fact, both me and Andrew do. Oftentimes, the atheist or the naturalist will say that they don't believe in any of these absolutes or something like that, but how they live their lives says otherwise. So their lived life, which I think is the ultimate, way you can show something true or false. Really, it's very important. Testifies that we live as if God does exist.
Can you elaborate on "we live as God exists"?
Yeah. I'm sure you have a family. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, a brother.
I do too. And even though we can get mad at our brothers and sometimes get beat up by them when we're younger, I guess, we still show an affection, a natural tendency, no matter what evolutionary biology says. We know something intuitively in us that we should look out for them, that we're not just automatons in a vast universe, a speck of dust, but we are our brother's keeper, and we treat them as if they have dignity and value. So even though a philosopher may say in a public lecture, well, all this stuff doesn't exist, we have no objective moral values, he's still going to want his audience to treat him with dignity and respect while giving the lecture. And I'm sure when he's done with the lecture, there's a way that we should live, and I think we all know it.
To put it a different way, we always abhor treating a person like an animal or treating a person like a collection of matter.
The majority of the time, we do.
Yeah, and
There's a bit of slave labor mixed in there, but that's besides the point.
Well, and that's why we abhor slavery too, right? Is that's treating a person like an animal, basically. And that's the thing, is that we act as the people that are generally considered the best in a moral sense, are the people who act as though the matter and animal natures of human are secondary to the nature of human as a human.
Yeah, So you say that us treating people like animal is wrong, and that we know it's wrong, but it's I feel like this is this is a societal change, is that we didn't think these things were wrong. We didn't used to think racism was wrong. We didn't used to think owning people was wrong. But it developed in society where we have now changed it to this society believes that that is wrong. So we adopt it.
But what you're talking about is moral improvement through time. The only way we can condemn things in the past, like slavery or the Holocaust or something else, the Crusades, for example, and is to say that we're improving with time. So we're measuring it to some standard of goodness, of right behavior that we, we testify in our lives.
So, you're exactly correct, Sky, that some of these things come from the culture or the society, right? But the question is, if it's just based on society, then we cannot say that's a culture that engages in slavery is wrong or a bad culture, just that it's different. But if there's some standard beyond just what the society teaches, then we can say, well, this society is better because it teaches freedom or is against slavery or so on and so forth.
I do have one question. Which society are we talking about? Because there's and it'll get off way into the weeds. But for this discussion, which society were you exactly talking about? Because there was a time, and the Roman Empire, there were people who were against the slavery that was going on, and that was a movement that kept on growing through time. So, which part of European society are we talking about?
That's a good point. I guess the thing that comes to mind the most is what happened in the Caribbean and North America, right? Which isn't a very long time span. It's only the last maybe 500 years.
Okay, so when we're talking about slavery, we're specifically talking about the African slave trade.
Yeah, generally.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear to the audience.
But we could also bring up Roman society, in which they practiced something. They left female infants a lot of times to die. It was Christians that largely changed that process. To say that was an improvement is to measure it by some standard. C.S. Lewis, who was a former atheist, he discusses all this in his book, Mere Christianity. I bet it's in your library. That would be a fascinating book to read. But there are good reasons, I think, why a person should be a Christian.
Well, the first one is because it's true.
Oh, you're just gonna pull that out there? Okay.
Hey, man, I've spent a lot of time on this, and if you guys think I made a mistake, I'm happy to be corrected. But this is a very big topic, and I honestly love science and logic and all these things, and the reason that I was attracted to Christianity was partially because it is fully in accord with those things.
Question: did you grow up as a Christian?
Well, I was until I was about 12 or so, and then I was a very serious agnostic for most of my adolescence, and then I sort of returned or converted as a young man, probably around your age.
Okay.
I became a Christian when I was 10 years old, 1 week before I was in a massive car accident, and I had to learn everything all over again. The things associated with my accident were miraculous, and all the doctors, the specialists, they had to bring me back to life numerous times, and they gave me no hope of living, much less walking or doing anything outside of a vegetative state. We both, my friend here, Andrew, we both have master's degrees. It's through education that the more education that I get, the more confident I am that Christianity is more plausibly true than atheism, even though we can't give a deductive proof with 100% certainty. Everything that we see, all the signposts, lead to the conclusion that it's more probable than not to be a Christian. And I hope that you check out that book. I bet it's in your local library. Mere Christianity.
What's the book called again?
It's called Mere Christianity. Mere Christianity, and it's by a wonderful author. His name is C.S. Lewis, and I'm sure you probably heard of him because you're really smart, and I think you would really love this book. He's a former atheist.
Okay.
So, as long as we're giving book recommendations, Ed Feiser, F-E-S-E-R, has a book called 5 Proofs of God, where he goes...
I've seen summaries of that. That's a popular one.
Yeah, he's really good too. Go ahead, Rebel.
Sorry. So it's just because actually about some of those proofs, I think about 2 or 3 of them actually just result in infinite regresses. Yeah.
Infinite regress. Are you trying to say infinite regress?
Because here, I saw someone phrase it this way, or this basically the argument that that 3 of those proofs for God that Aquinas presented is actually like premise 1, stuff exists. Stuff premise 2, stuff had to had the beginning, and frick. Wait, yeah.
Okay, I think I.
And premise 3, stuff came. So conclusion, stuff came from stuff that came from no reason. Yeah, I think that's how I saw it being phrased. Yeah.
Okay, I make sure you hit mute when you're done. But I think Rebel, I do understand where you're coming from. You're trying to give an argument, or you're talking about the Kalam cosmological argument. Whatever that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Now, it would show that if the universe didn't begin to exist, there would be an infinite regress. So we need to, if we're rational at least, we need to say that an infinite regress cannot exist, rather than how would we get to today in time, because time is measurable. And,
So,
okay, go ahead.
So I have a different perspective. I actually think that the column cosmological argument is one of the weaker arguments. But basically it comes to this, is that if there is a infinite regress of causes, then you have to figure out, why does that infinite regress actually exist? So in some sense, the good analogy is, if you have a train, right? And you add another passenger car to it and do that over and over again, you end up with an infinitely long train, but nothing that gives gets it moving, right? And so a infinite number of causes won't give the support needed to give an explanation for it.
I think that's a good argument for why the Kalam is successful, Andrew. Thomas Aquinas, when he was given his 5 ways, he knew about the Kalam cosmological argument, and he knew that if it could be shown that the universe began to exist, and of course we know that it began to exist, current cosmology shows that, then it's very easy to show that God exists. But I understand what you're saying. I use it because it's just very easy. A lot of these arguments show that God, the existence of God is more plausibly true if it can be shown that the universe began to exist.
Sure, and that's what it basically pivots on, right? Is that if you believe Stephen Hawking's that time and space and everything started at the Big Bang, that is literally the premise of the Kalam cosmological argument. And so basically, if you think that Stephen Hawking's is correct about the Big Bang, then it's a very logical and quick proof to get from that to the first mover.
Well, I think Stephen Hawking is philosophically confused.
Oh yes, he is, but he's correct about like time starting.
Well, he pictures time as like a cone, and he has imaginary time. But I really don't, Anyway, I think we can argue both from the traditional Thomistic arguments and the Kalam. So there's different approaches where we can show that the universe did begin to exist. But I think this is a good discussion, Sky, because all these premises from the Kalam cosmological argument or from the other cosmological arguments from Thomas Aquinas or Gottfried Leibniz, they show that the universe needs an explanation. And if you're going to say that the things in the universe, or indeed the whole universe, doesn't need an explanation, you're being unscientific. And I think we all want to be scientific here.
I don't think nobody really believes that we don't need an explanation. Of course we do. We don't have one yet because we aren't there yet. We're constantly discovering new things every day about the universe, and we're slowly making our way to actually figure out this. And for the Big Bang, it wasn't the creation of matter. It wasn't the creation of said like everything in the universe. It was an expansion of that space. We don't know anything beyond that, like where that matter came from, and we don't have an answer to that.
I think that's incorrect. I know I have a lot of quotes here that top physicists like Christopher Isham, who talks about all matter and energy coming into existence at the Big Bang. You have also Alexander Vilenkin, and I have a number of quotes from him that say that also under general conditions, all of these theories like the oscillating model or the steady state or vacuum fluctuation or the quantum physical models, they all need a beginning of the universe, and that includes space and time, or in Stephen Hawking's words, space-time. Again, for the explanation of the universe, what we're saying is that everything in the universe, including the whole universe, exists. The whole universe itself needs an explanation. And if everything in the universe began to exist, the whole universe too would need an explanation. So that's a philosophically reasonable position.
So I'm actually running up against a hard stop personally.
Like time-wise or like mentally?
Yeah, like time-wise.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, we'll probably end this conversation because I have to get to bed also. Well, in fact, I don't know if you need to get to bed, Andrew, but I'm getting a little tired. But
yeah, I was gonna say that we've been going on for an hour now. Not saying to wrap it up or anything, but we have been going on for an hour. If you guys want to continue this for 30 minutes or longer, please say so. But if not, then we can do another debate, going forward, and just continue this another time.
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up now.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was a
Oh.
pleasure speaking to you, Sky, and I'm sure we want you on again. You're a very intelligent person, so yeah, we would love to have you on again. But be sure to get that book, Mere Christianity, from C.S. Lewis. I think you'll love it.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
It was nice
And-
nice speaking to you also, Rebel, and we hope to speak to you again.
Sure.
Yep. God bless you guys, and have a wonderful evening.
God bless.
All right,
I
so
don't have an atheist version of that response. Sorry.
Hey. I'm just.
Good
I'm
fortune.
just yeah. That's all I'm gonna say. See ya. Okay.
all right. So I thank everybody for watching. Either watching live or watching later. That is the major way of support. Thank you for supporting us in that way. You can also support us in other ways. There's RebelTheAtheist.com where you can see everything that we're doing. There's an events calendar there. You can see what our scheduled live streams and everything is. You can also support us on in the links below if you so want to do that. You can also subscribe to one of the most fastest growing Christian run debate channels on YouTube. I thank everybody for watching and have a good night.